Hi, welcome to HAI at Work. I'm Dan Sweet. I'm Director of Public Relations and Communications for HAI, and we're glad you were able to join us today. Members of the military are an incredible group of people, and HAI is always very, very proud to work with these people. And so we're very proud today to bring you a very special webinar on helping military pilots and some mechanics make the transition into the civilian world. And so we think that this topic is always valuable. We know that there are a number of programs out there. We know that we've had a very popular program at HAI Heli Expo led by these very people that are going to be running this webinar today. But we want to make sure that we always have this information available to members of the military. We know that people are always transitioning at different times, at different speeds, and these people have gone through it. They know exactly what they're talking about. They will introduce themselves here in just a minute, but I want to run through our panelists really fast. I want to start today. I'm going to go in alphabetical order. Kim Barwick, who is a Sikorsky S-76 D captain with IBM. We have Fallon Blattner, who is a CH-47 pilot working fires out west right now. We have Becky Hagerty, who is a helicopter student pilot at Utah State University. Our moderator today is Heli McBride. She is a longtime partner with HAI and has been a big program manager for the Mil2Civ program. She's an AW-139 IFR second in command pilot with Bristow. Dave McCall is a utility pilot. Cam Thompson is an EMS helicopter pilot with Dare Med Flight. And Scott Tennyson is an AH-64 experimental test pilot and DPE for the Boeing company. Scott is also one of our Salute to Excellence winners from this year. He was the Dub Blessing Flight Instructor of the Year award recipient, and he's also been one of the co-chairs on the Mil2Civ program. Our webinars are interactive. We do strongly encourage today that you ask questions. They are not going to follow the regular format where all the questions are at the end. They're going to try and answer the questions as they come in. Please use the question and answer module that's on your computer. It's on your phone. It could be on the side. It could be on the bottom. We will pay attention to the chat feature, but the question and answer module will be where we pay the most attention. Our webinars are recorded. We try to get these postings up within a day or so. After the webinar is complete, we encourage people to go back, review the material, to share the material. And I'll give you a special warning right now. All of our panelists have agreed to share their LinkedIn profile information that will appear after the presentation's over. So have your phone ready or do a print screen or something with your computer so you can capture that information. But that information alone, where they're willing to reach out, allow you to reach out to them, is going to be hugely helpful. So now, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Heli McBride to come on and begin our presentation today.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much for supporting our Mil2Civ.
Glad to have you here, Heidi. I'm just going to drop off and let you run with things today.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for everyone who's attending our webinar today. We are pretty excited. We've got a great group of panelists with us today, primarily focusing on highlighting the different sectors of the industry, how to make a successful transition from your active duty military status into a very successful civilian helicopter aviation career, whether that's as a pilot or a mechanic. And I'm just going to start out by introducing myself, and each panelist will come on, introduce themselves, give a short description of their background, how they made that transition, where they are at now. After that, it will be sort of a campfire discussion addressing specific questions the questions are primarily pointed at helping you make that transition. So without further ado, my name is Heli McBride. As Dan Sweet said, I'm one of the lead coordinators for our military to civilian workshop through HAI Heli Expo. My background, I was an avionics technician on MH-60 Jayhawk helicopters in the U.S. Coast Guard. I served 8 years in the Coast Guard and used my maintenance background to get my airframe and power plant license. I then used my post 9/11 GI Bill to go to flight school. And I used the post 9/11 GI Bill in association with a degree program and worked from my private license all the way through my CFI and my II, certified flight instructor instrument rating. After that, I accepted a job flying tours in Pensacola and Panama City Beach, Florida, working as both a pilot and a mechanic. I worked and flew until I had about 1,000 hours of pilot and command time, which throughout this webinar, you'll hear sort of the magic number for getting that first turbine job or transitioning into the civilian sector into a turbine aircraft. After that, I was hired by Bristow, flying the 407 in the Gulf of Mexico, supporting the oil and gas industry. I am still with Bristow today, and I have advanced through a number of different aircraft to where I'm currently flying as an IFR second in command in the AW-139 helicopter. That's my background. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Fallon Blattner. She's going to introduce herself and tell you about her transition from the military to the civilian sector.
All right, thanks, Heidi. Hi, everybody. My name's Fallon Blattner. I am here to represent the fire industry. I started out flying in the military in the U.S. Army on active duty, was rated as a UH-60 Alpha Lima Mike pilot in the medevac. Once I left the military in about mid-2017, I really didn't have enough flight time to qualify for many of the civilian jobs. So my original plan was to become a CFI and CFII in a traditional civilian flight school. I went ahead and got my PIC sign-offs in the Robinson 22 and 44 and was actively pursuing that goal. But at that time, I got hired by a Part 91 tour operator in South Dakota, Black Hills Aerial Adventures. I was primarily flying the Bell 206, which many of you may have learned on in the military, at least that's what I did, and as well as the R-44, the R-66, and the Bell 47. After my summer in South Dakota, I had the magical 1,000 hours that Heidi alluded to previously, and I accepted a position as a second in command with Columbia Helicopters, which was primarily working overseas back in Afghanistan. I spent the next 3.5 years working in Afghanistan with Columbia Helicopters, originally as an SIC. I upgraded into a PIC command pilot role with them. I also became a 135 flight instructor for them, did my long line training at their expense as well. In early 2001, I decided to make a career change to do firefighting full time. And I moved over to Colson Aviation, who I'm currently with now, where they upgraded me into the CH-47 Chinook. And I'm now a Chinook captain flying on fires, both here in the US and then also in Australia and South America in the winter.
Awesome. That's an awesome career, Fallon. And thank you for being a panelist. Moving on to Kim Barwick, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself. And if all my panelists could just go ahead and put their cameras up now, and we'll go ahead and have the gallery format for our attendees to see us all. So Kim Barwick, go ahead and you can tell us about your transition and your progress through the aviation industry.
Hi, I'm Kim. I currently work for the IBM Corporate Flight Department, flying the helicopter, and I will soon be flying the Falcon 2000. We fly an S-76D model. My career has followed a pretty traditional civilian route, where I worked as a flight instructor for 4 years out in Hawaii. Then I got a job flying tours in New York City, flying the EC-130 and the Bell 407. I knew I wanted to work in the medium twins, so I got a job flying Part 135 VIP for Associated Aircraft Group in the Northeast, flying anywhere from Boston down to DC with a fleet of Sikorsky S-76s. That then led me to my role at IBM, where I am now. Although my career has been in the civilian environment, as my role as a flight instructor for 4 years in Hawaii, I worked closely with people with, it was a VA funded flight school or VA approved flight school. So I work closely with people that were either transitioning or using their VA benefits for flight training.
Great, thank you, Kim. I'm excited that Kim is here, even though she doesn't have a traditional military background. Kim has been very successful in the aviation industry as a whole, starting out going to flight school, working as an instructor, and progressing basically to where she's at now at IBM, which really is the top tier corporate position in the United States. So I'm very proud of Kim, and she's got a lot of great things to share with us as far as how to properly progress and how to network effectively. All right, moving on to Scott Tennyson.
Hi, I'm Scott. I started my little aviation dream about 35 years ago at the University of North Dakota. I was an awardee of an ROTC scholarship, and that school, as some of you know, has a pretty robust flight training department for both fixed wing and helicopters. So I started training in both on the Army's dime. Of course, I owed them time, so I did 8 years of active duty, starting out in the AH-1 Cobra and then on to the H-64 Apache, where I did an 8-year commissioned officer stint, obviously platoon leader, followed by some staff positions, and then finally ended as a company commander. When I got out of the military, and this hopefully will be meaningful to some folks out there, I didn't feel like I was marketable. I didn't have a ton of flight time back then in the Army. Commissioned officers did not fly a whole ton. We were busy at meetings and writing training plans and things of that nature. So compared to a warrant officer with 8 years, my flight time just paled in comparison. So worried that I wouldn't ever be able to get a flying job. Thanks to networking, which we'll talk a lot about today, and I'll certainly be talking about more. I got a job at a company called Groen Brothers, which was a gyroplane manufacturer. They wanted to bring commercial gyroplanes to the aviation world. There, I became a commercial and CFI and gyroplane and started doing experimental flight tests, which was great experience for me for a job that came in the future. After I left Groen Brothers, I was an air methods pilot in the helicopter air ambulance world, just like Cam. I did that for 8 years and started out as a line pilot, worked myself up to a base lead and then safety person for Arizona. Then eventually I took over as the lead pilot position. I think it's a chief pilot position now, but it was an area manager of Arizona, Nevada, and California for LifeNet and Mercy Air, if you've heard of those names. So that was my Part 135 experience, and then I left there to go to my dream job, which I'm at today, which is as an experimental test pilot at the Boeing company right here in Arizona, outside of Phoenix. I am lucky enough to fly Apaches and AH-6 Little Birds and Special Ops Mil2Civ aircraft, whole assortment of aircraft. As Dan mentioned in the intro, also an FAA DPE. So I regularly fly 6 to 7 different models of helicopters and 3 to 4 different airplanes for the Boeing company. So I've lived a very blessed and lucky life. 100% of it, I promise you, is due to networking. So we are going to talk about that for sure. One last piece I'll throw out there for those of you that have heard of the Mil2Civ. We do write articles in some of the trade publications, and I've mentioned a few times, if you run across it, that I am happy to help people as a DPE. I have the authorization to do admin functions, and one of those is MilComp. So I have been doing as many free MilComps as I can. Not bragging, but I don't know if there's any other DPEs out there doing them for free. I do it because I'm paying it forward, right? I was just helping each other out. Yesterday, I did a fixed wing commercial, single and multi, and then a initial CFI for another Apache guy, and I've got a Navy guy. We're going to be doing his over the weekend. So reach out to me if you have MilComp on your horizon. One of the good things that came out of COVID, if that even makes sense, is that we can do most things in the FAA remotely now, which means we don't have to be in person. We can do everything over a video similar to this. And happy to help you out. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. And I'm going to specifically ask you some questions during the webinar about what they can start doing now to get their logbooks ready to make that transition, and how to reach out to you personally to make that a successful MilComp experience. So thank you very much. All right, moving on to Cam. He's our recent transitioner. He just came out of the Navy and has now jumped right into an EMS position. So Cam, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi. My name is Cam Thompson. I did over 10 years in the Navy. Started off in the Bell 206, and then I ended up flying the MH-53 Big Iron. Following that, I transitioned into an instructor role, flying the MH-60 Sierra. Right around there is when I started doing the Mil2Civ webinars, going to the Heli Expo, talking to HAI, seeing what resources they had. And then after that, I did a brief stint in test and evaluation, got out early last month, and was able to accept a position flying air ambulance operations in the H-145. So just like he was talking about, I also did the military competency with the FAA, got my commercial CFII, all that stuff. It's super easy. And yeah, it made the transition very easy for me. So I'm glad to be here. Hope to answer some questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Cam. And that's definitely something I'm going to tag you and Scott together, just how you were very specific in getting those comps, what you focused on as far as your flight hours, and what you brought to the FAA to get that certified. All right. Bringing it on to Becky.
Hi, everyone. My name is Becky Hagerty. I was an Air Force officer for 8 years. I was a cyber officer under the realm of tactical warfighter communications. So spent a lot of time in the field leading enlisted guys a lot smarter than me. I sat down one deployment for a coffee break in a tent on the border of Syria, and saw a PBS show about search and rescue, helicopter piloting. And at the time I was contemplating, do I really want to get out when my time is up? I had taken a bonus, taken the blood money, and I had a couple more years left and was really wrestling with it. And what I got from that program was, that checks the boxes of some things that I want. I want adventure, I want chaos, but I want to be home more often than not. And I want a sense of purpose where I can help other people. So it tucked itself away in my mind. And then 2 years later, before I went to Afghanistan, I really started researching it. And then after Afghanistan, I said, yeah, it's time to go enjoy life in a different way. And so I was stationed, eventually had made my way to Hill Air Force Base in northern Utah. Many people know about Southern Utah University. I looked at them, but last minute I found out about a different school, Utah State University, USU, up north, an hour north of where I lived, or an hour north of Hill, and checked out their program, and it just really fit what I was looking for. So I'm kind of just here today to talk about what going to school, if you were a military member who didn't fly, I didn't fly, had a lot of friends who did it, considered it, but didn't want to do that 10, 11-year commitment. Plus I was making the senior captain at that point. So I'm here just to talk if you want to go do a civilian career and what it looks like to use your GI Bill, the school comparison tool and all the VA resources out there. And then just some tips about the school environment, some things you want to look for. As I had connected with one of the Helicopter Association International directors, Stacy Sheard, she said to me very pointedly, she said, hey, the best thing about being a civilian is you get to choose. If you're not jiving with your instructor, it's your money. You can politely ask for a new one. So there's some things to look about at what you're going to do, what kind of aircraft you're going to fly, how that translates to your GI Bill, where you're going to fly. So for me, we fly here in the mountains of Utah. So every single flight hour is mountain time, which matters if you want to do certain sectors in the industry. And then it's a small school where all the instructors know you, so they can help you and they want to see you succeed. It's not this kind of pilot factory. And we fly the R-22 and R-44, which is very popular in the industry as well. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us, Becky. You bring a lot of really valuable information, because this webinar is not just for our pilots, but also for those who may be active duty, who want to pursue a different career and want to jump in aviation, use their post 9/11 GI Bill education benefits for flight school, like I did and like Becky did. So we're here to answer those questions. Last but not least, I want to introduce Dave McCall.
Hi, Heidi. Made it back.
Perfect.
Hello, my name is David McCall, and I'm a utility pilot. I was served in the British Army. I was a paratrooper for 7 years, and I tried to go to flight school there, but at the time it just didn't work out. So I left the forces and went to Iraq as a contractor to pay for flight school. And I kind of figured with contracting, 1 year there would cover flight school. Fortunately, 1 year turned into 5. And then I eventually did leave. And I went to flight school in Florida. And I went through the traditional path of private up to CFI. After that, I got a job with Chesapeake Bay Helicopters. Actually, let me go back a bit. The instructor I had, he was really into networking. And when I was doing my commercial or my instrument, any cross country I did, we always did it to another flight school in Florida. And he said, you should go in and say hello. Because he told me not to worry about the interview at my flight school, because by the time I'm finished 8 months down the line, they're going to know everything they need to know about me. The flight schools that you're not attending, they don't know you. So we did quite a lot of networking while I was still in flight training. That did pay off. I got a job with Chesapeake Bay Helicopters as a flight instructor, and I showed up there. And the day I showed up was the day they closed their flight school. So instead of being a flight instructor first, I actually flew pipeline patrol in a Schweitzer helicopter. And that was all throughout the Eastern Seaboard, Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania. I transitioned into the MD 500 and the Bell 206 doing power line patrols. And I stayed with that company for a year. After that, I went to a company called Air 2, and they trained me up on long lining and external loads and in the power line environment. And today I work for a utility helicopter company, and we do power line construction, maintenance, inspection, emergency response, and I'm also one of the pilot trainers at this company. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Well, we've already got a question from Kyla Mills, which actually is one of the questions we have on the webinar, my list of questions. Her question is, can anybody who flew EMS or oil platforms speak to the 7-7 rotation and the 14-14 schedule rotation? So I can address the oil and gas industry. I work a 14-14 rotation. One of the things that I really appreciate about that schedule is you get 14 whole days off. And when you are working a 14-14 rotation, you work a 14-hour duty day. Now, if you have a customer that's extremely busy, yes, that can be a really challenging schedule. But you get 10 hours of duty rest every day. Other customers are not quite as vigorous, I suppose. Like, for example, like one customer I may fly 65 to 70 hours for on a hitch. And then another customer, if I'm on a different customer, I may fly only 35 hours. So it just depends on how busy you are, but you still get the rest that you need, because you do receive 10 hours of rest for each duty day cycle. So Cam, if you want to jump on the question as far as like 7 and 7, and then after him, Scott, if you want to jump on about like, because one of the questions she addressed is specifically going from day shift to night shift and how that might affect with your sleep schedule and your readiness.
Yeah, Scott may be able to address more of the long-term effects of that, because I've only been in the industry a very short time. But the biggest draw to that was the 7-day weekends, more or less, with the family, where I get 7 days to focus on the job, and then I get 7 days completely off to focus on home. So that's been big, and it seems to be enough time to recover, to spend the time that I need to, and be ready to transition back and forth. It doesn't feel rushed or anything, but Scott can probably speak to the more long-term of back and forth to nights.
Yeah, I agree 100% with what Cam just said. I used to joke with my friends that were also pilots. They'd tell me how they're taking vacation or PTO to go deer hunting or something, and I'd tell them, well, that's good for you. I'm on one of my 26 weeks of paid vacation right now. Don't tell them that you work 7 straight, but a lot of people do anyway in this industry. To the point, I worked every combination of shifts you could think of. And as a person who just generally doesn't sleep well, as I switch around between days and nights, you're going to find 2 typical work duties. So picture an EMS or HAA, it's called now, base. It needs 4 pilots to staff 24/7, and they overlap working the 7 or 14 days. Of course, the day shift and the night shift. There's 2 ways of doing it. 2 of the pilots work 4 days, followed by 3 nights, and the other 2 pilots work 3 days, followed by 4 nights, or all the pilots work 7 days, 1 hitch, 7 nights, the next hitch. So it's either 4-3, 3-4 split, or just straight 7 7 and 7. I will tell you that as you get older, you probably won't like the 4 and 3, 3 and 4 piece because your whole week off, you lived a normal life. Your first 3 or 4 days of your hitch, you work a normal life. And then in a 24-hour period, you're going to suddenly supposed to be switching your circadian rhythm to being wide awake to fly safely in the middle of the night. Doesn't really work well. Not to sound like I'm poking at ages, but when I was younger, I could do it standing on my head. Of course, I could do all-nighters, in college partying as well, which now I'm not anywhere close to that. So do look at the schedule. When you go to a base visit, which is one of those things you should do before you accept a job, meet the nurses, meet the medics, the other pilots. If you get a warm and fuzzy from them, feels like family, ask a bunch of questions. What kind of shift do you guys work? And, oh, we do the 7 days followed by 7 nights. And if that sounds like something disgusting to you, ask them, do we have the ability to switch, to the 3 and 4, 4 and 3? And even though this is a little bit off topic, if you go to that base visit and you don't have a warm and fuzzy, you don't feel welcome, follow your gut, find another base and go visit them.
No, that's excellent advice. Thanks you, Scott. Definitely base visits are a big deal. So speaking of base visits, one of the questions I have as far as networking and how do you get access to have permission to go to a base visit? If you're not 100% sure you want the job, do you have to apply first? Do you have to speak to the chief pilot? Like what would you say is the most effective way to get an invitation for a base visit when you're still exploring that part of the industry? Scott?
I had to hit on mute again. Yes, so there's really 3 main ways I've seen it done. In fact, I have a friend who's in the process of doing it now. Bases are typically, unless they're located within a hospital, they're typically very accessible. They can be at airports, at little helipads with a trailer house next to it, all kinds of different scenarios. And Cam, you should tell us what yours is like when I finish here. But you can, through networking, get an invite to stop by virtually any community-based EMS place and just show up at a predetermined time. And they usually bring the nurse and the medic, if it's staffed like that, out and to chit chat. The other way is to go through a more formal route, which would be obviously contacting the company and seeing if you can get official visits. And the third way is through networking through a guy named Cam.
There you go.
You like that?
Good intro. So I'd like to also jump into, we can talk about the bases and quality of life maybe in a little bit, but I'd like to start out by, can each presenter, and I'll start out just kind of going down the list of people that introduce themselves. I'd like to talk about what are the flight hour requirements you need and the certifications that you need to go from a military pilot position into a job at, say, in firefighting or in EMS. So things for our listeners to understand how to get their logbooks ready for, what is an ATP requirement, or what is 135 minimums, et cetera. And how do they prepare now while they're in the military and actively flying to get into a position that they want in the civilian sector? And 2, if they're wanting to become a pilot later on, what are those minimum flight hour requirements that they need to be successful and to make the jump into the sector that they really want to work in? Go ahead. I'll start with you, Fallon, if you want to jump in with that.
Okay, so for firefighting, we separate aircraft into 3 categories: type 1, type 2s, and type 3s. Type 1s are your dual engine multi-crew aircraft like Chinooks and Blackhawks, Sky Cranes. Your type 2s are your medium helicopters. Those are something like a Huey, for example, would be a medium. And then your type 3s are your light ships, so like A-Stars, 407s, things of that nature. And each one kind of requires a different skill set, if you will, and a different set of requirements. But in general, you're going to need over 1,000 hours to qualify for kind of any of those roles. It's more ideally around 1,500. if you're in a multi-crew aircraft, like in one of the type ones, especially coming out of the military, you can realistically expect to be a second in command starting off. If you have more light ship experience or Huey experience, you could potentially move into those aircraft right away around that 1,500 hour mark, just depending upon how much time and experience that you have in those aircraft. And those are crewed single pilot, which is sometimes unusual for people coming out of the military. The biggest, I would say, challenge in my sector of the industry, which is sort of evolving right now, is many of our aircraft, especially the light ships and about half of the heavies, is you need to have long line time, which I'm sure Dave will talk about as well. And in the military, you know, I did, being medevac, I did hoist, you know, I did some cargo stuff as well, but long line time, you know, in the civilian world, they really are looking for you controlling the aircraft and the long line simultaneously, not having a crew member be participating in that. There are many ways, there's schools out there, but honestly, most companies out there do have some ability to train you. But again, it's very unlikely that starting off right out of the gate, they're just going to train you immediately right away. I'm not saying it wouldn't happen, but that's why I say oftentimes we see military members starting as SICs, maybe doing a season or two as an SIC, getting some of that long line training. And then generally you have the type rating for the aircraft already, but potentially getting a type rating and starting to work into the captain role. And then the other thing in my industry is that in order to fight fire here in the US, you have to be a DOI or US Forest Service carded. That is something that your company will pay for once you have the long line time experience and you're also rated in the aircraft. Cards are generally good for 3 years. Again, that is something that your company will put you through, but generally you need to do a season at a minimum with the company to sort of show them that you are committed. They get to try you out, you try them out, etc., to make sure that you're a good fit. So that's about all I got for that.
Thank you, Fallon. Kim Barwick, what sort of flight hour requirements would somebody need to get to where you are, and would networking play a part in getting into a position as prestigious as working at IBM or corporate in the Northeast sector of the United States?
I think networking always plays a role in whatever position you're going for, whether it's a flight instructor job, tour job, or any job you're going for. Really, networking does help. Who you know will get you the job, what you know will help you keep the job. So that's what you need to work on. For my company, our requirements are, if you're coming in as an SIC, it's 1,500 hours, but you need 500 hours multi. Generally, when we're looking for pilots, we're looking to hire captains. So the PIC requirements are first class medical, 3,500 hours, 1,000 in category, 1,000 multi-engine, and 50 hours at least in type. So it's not really the job that you're looking for coming straight out of flight instruction, and you will work your way up to it. Yeah. The other question you asked in terms of logbooks and how to prep yourself for a job. One thing I would recommend is really getting to know your FARs in terms of, if you are going to apply for a Part 135 job, pull out your FARs and know what the requirements are for that Part 135 job.
Kim, would you briefly explain what a FARS is? For
Federal Aviation Regulations.
Yes, there's a whole manual called the FARs, the Federal Aviation Regulations, that will spell out the flight hour requirements needed for Part 135, Part 91, Part 61, et cetera. That's what Kim is referring to.
Yeah, and if you are somebody that is transitioning from the military, I highly recommend you look at the Federal Aviation Regulation 6151, which is the pilot in command. Become familiar with that so you're not cutting yourself short of the hours that you should be logging.
Excellent. Thank you, Kim. Moving on to Scott Tennyson. Could you tell us about what it takes to basically be an Apache test pilot at your dream job, how you got there, and maybe also partly address, we've got some questions here from our attendees about logbooks, how to transition your military flight time to a civilian logbook. And if we could just address that briefly and then maybe dig into the logbook question later, but certainly how to get to where you are now as a test pilot at Boeing.
Sure, absolutely. So I think you'll start to see, as Kim just mentioned, that there's not a hierarchy, but there's certainly stepping stones, if you will, in our industry. If you listen to each person's background in the beginning, it's very rare for somebody to go to a flight school X, get all their certificates and ratings, and then turn around and they're doing something fabulous in a S-76 or something like that. There's going to be tours in between. There's going to be long line work. There's going to be pipeline patrol. And then eventually you might work for that corporate office, flying some $15 million helicopter instead of a $150,000 helicopter. For the military person, because you're not that person coming out of flight school, if you did a 20, 30-year career as a pilot, like some of my friends at Boeing in flight ops, you are absolutely armed to go virtually anywhere, as any of the panelists on this board could give you experiences to that as well. If you do a very short stint as a military pilot, you might be in that position I was when I got out, where you're looking at minimums really close and going, well, looks like that's out of the question because I don't have 1,500 hours of PIC. Where in the world am I going to get that? We help, by the way, with ideas for that. Short answer is absolutely log your time appropriately. We'll talk about that in depth, like Heidi mentioned. The higher the job goes, the less you have to show flight time. And what I mean by that is, I don't believe an employee at Boeing has ever shown a logbook. Then again, they don't even entertain anybody who's not been a pilot for 20 to 30 years, an accomplished Army IP, MTP, or XP. So you actually don't really care if they have any cross country or solo time, because they literally have thousands and thousands of hours. That doesn't mean you shouldn't keep a logbook. I'll touch on that now, Heidi, real quick. Most pilots do not know how to properly log flight time. Even civil trained pilots. There's lots of misunderstandings when it comes to nighttime and PIC and all this other stuff. Heidi mentioned Stacy earlier, and she's on as a participant here. She wrote an article a long time ago, and I've written my own version for other situations about explaining how you log pilot time appropriately, but most importantly, how you can convert your flight time. I'll give you a really super quick example. I'm kind of a geek about regulations, and so I can tell you the FAA logs time differently than the Army pilot based on service guidance in AR 95-1 versus the NATOPS guidance for Navy people, and everybody logs something different. Even go so far as to say that most flight schools don't log flight time appropriately either. They log it by the hobs because that's what you're paying for, but ask the FAA, you truly don't start logging until you move under your own power for the intent to fly. So we try not to get in the weeds because really no one's doing it right. But the important thing to know is it's your record. And when you sign your name to that page or to that logbook, you put whatever is accurate according to the regulations that you're trying to meet. So if you're an Army Black Hawk or Apache pilot, and you have to taxi a quarter of a mile to get to the helipad before you do your hit checks to take off on your flight, that taxi time is PIC if you're manipulating the flight controls. That is loggable flight time in the civil world. So for you to go back and look and say, look, I did 1,000 sorties at Illesheim, Germany, and I know it took me at least 10 minutes from the time we started hovering before I got to the pad, add a 0.2 to every sortie you did. No one can ever question that. If they do, challenge them. Say, well, no, my 759 doesn't match my civil logbook because we log time differently. I'm attesting this is my flight time. And if they're not good with that, well, there's something deeper going on there. It's your time. You can log it on a bar napkin, an Excel spreadsheet, a fancy logbook, but do learn how to log it. Come to Heli Expo and we will teach you how to log it at the Mil2Civ transition course.
Thank you for the shameless plug. I appreciate that. Please do. A bunch of these panelists will be present. HAI Heli Expo is held every single year, and we have a free military to civilian transition workshop every year, the Monday prior to the floor opening. So moving on to Cam, addressing the flight hour requirements to become an EMS pilot. And one of the things that one of our co-coordinators, Jean, mentioned is also the IFR requirements to get an IFR twin engine position in the EMS industry. Could you also touch on that if you're familiar with it?
Yeah, so there's a lot, if not all the positions that you're going to be looking at are for companies that are CAMPS accredited, right? The Commission for Accreditation of Medical Transport Systems. That's an organization that will require that all the pilots they hire have 2,000 hours total time. 1,500 should be in helicopters, and typically it's about 1,000 helicopter PIC hours is what you're going to need. They also require, it may be hit or miss if you get with a VFR or IFR program, but typically they want about 200 hours of instrument time, 50 of which is in actual weather. And they also want around 100 hours of aided time and 50 hours of unaided time. So make sure that for the Navy guys that you're also logging unaided time, because the Navy doesn't really, they log night and aided time together typically. So make sure that you're logging unaided time so that you can show that you have that required time. You also need, typically it's a second class medical and a commercial. Some programs require an ATP and a first class medical. And there's also body weight limits as well for the air ambulance positions that they may stipulate that you can maintain a certain body weight with all the gear so that they can accommodate different size patients in the aircraft. What
is the basic body weight that would be required in the EMS industry generally?
Typically, the postings will show about 215 to 230 pounds, but it depends on the posting and the aircraft that they're flying, the environment that they're flying in, the power available. They may or may not stipulate that.
Sure, thanks. That was one of our questions from one of the attendees was asking about the weight requirements. So usually 200 to 250 is one of the limitations. And a lot of times it takes into consideration whether you're able to maintain that weight throughout the duration of your tenure at the company. All right, so Dave, McCall, could you address the flight hour requirements and the sort of the experience that you can get now while you're active duty to get into the power line utility work?
Yeah. Hey guys, how you doing? Yeah, the utility work, they're going to want your commercial license and a second class medical certificate, and it'll be assumed that everyone's got that. They want 1,000 hours of turbine time, long line proficiency, low level wire environment time, and time in the aircraft type. But what they want and what they get can be two different things. I always say 3 out of 4 ain't bad. If you got 3 of the 4, go for it. If the military guys have quite a hard time transitioning to, I'd say, the power line section, because not many fly single engine aircraft, single pilot, single engine. One thing that you can do, all the Black Hawk pilots, the Black Hawk is used extensively in the utility industry and in the power line industry for setting poles. A lot of the companies that fly Black Hawk also have other aircraft in their inventory, 407s, A-Stars, 500s. So that could be a possible way in for the Black Hawk guys, and use that to your advantage. If utility is definitely the way you want to go, you may be looking at taking a stepping stone job or a way into that, and you may be qualified for EMS or offshore. My advice to you, if you take that route, do not put yourself in like an S92 or an S76. Try and go for the 407 or the A-Star, because those aircraft are used in the utility industry. And you can also read up in Federal Aviation Regulations Part 133.
Okay, good. Thank you. 133 specifically focuses on like long line, and also does that cover human external cargo, Dave? The 133?
It does now, yeah. Look up Federal Aviation Regulations 133. There's also an advisory circular, which is probably better to, I think it's easier to read, the advisory circular 133B. It's
Perfect.
quite an improvement over the A.
Thanks. So one of our other questions from the attendees is, what should I do to, I'm about to retire, what should I do to start setting myself up for success? My first response to that is begin to network, but how do you begin to network effectively? So I'd like to pull both Fallon and Kim Barwick in. What advice would you give to somebody who's about to retire? They've got quite a bit of flight time and they want to transition civilian sector as a helicopter pilot. What should they start doing now for that preparation? Fallon?
Yeah, I mean, I think this sounds like a shameless plug because we keep bringing it up, but you really need to try to get your butt to Heli Expo. It's in Atlanta this year. Even if you can only spend a day there, it's better than nothing. Attending webinars like this is great. There's also other networking, I guess, conferences or educational conferences that are put on both virtually and in person. Another one is Heli Success. That's where I started. It's run by Lynn Burks from Rotorcraft Pro, and it is virtual this year, but that's where I started out and, you know, met people who told me I needed to go to HAI, and I went to Mil2Civ in 2017, and I met many of these people who are on this call there, and it's, you know, it's shocking that only a couple years later, here I am sitting on a panel, but it's all because of the people that you meet. Actually, at Heli Success was where I first met Kim, and you know, now Kim and I work really closely together through another professional organization called the Whirly Girls, for female aviators and mechanics. And there's lots of, you know, specialized, I guess, conferences and organizations that you can be a part of, but you really just have to get out there and go to them. And if you're an introvert, kind of like me, you just need to kind of get out of your shell. But again, at HAI, they gave a great presentation on, if you are an introvert, how to network as well. So it's really getting out there and going to these conferences and meeting these people that end up not necessarily giving you the job, but introducing you to people who can get you the job.
Heidi, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry. So Kim, I'll jump on you. If you please let us know what your recommendation would be for somebody who is jumping into the civilian sector as a retiree. And then I'd like Cam to jump in right after you on his recommendations. And basically, like, okay, we've mentioned HAI and Heli Expo. Maybe Kim, you can kind of give a little more in-depth description of, okay, what is HAI and what is the Mil2Civ at Heli Expo, and how does networking work in there? And then maybe do a shameless plug for the career fair that's right after Mil2Civ.
Yeah, so HAI Heli Expo is basically the international trade show for the helicopter industry. So not only do you have all your large helicopter companies there, it's everything from education, training. You've got also safety seminars, in addition to meeting pretty much everybody from the helicopter industry, whether it's the guy that supplies the screw on the tail rotor to people that supply the whole helicopter. They're all there. So this is a good way to network. So not only conferences like that, if you know there's a specific industry that you want to go in, try and find a conference that's specific to that industry. You can also try local community organizations. For example, up in the Northeast, we have an organization that's called the Eastern Region Helicopter Council. There are regional councils. This is a good way to network in your local community. If you are transitioning out of the military, if you're visiting airports, talk to people at airports. You never know who you're going to meet. If you see a civilian helicopter in airport, you know, just chat to the pilot. You never know who you're going to meet and how they may be able to help you down the road.
Heidi, you're muted again.
Sorry, I'm trying to like type answers and then talk to you guys. I apologize. Cam, you want to jump in on this for me?
Yeah, I mean, the Mil2Civ was huge for me with not only going over resumes and learning all about the industry, right? I knew I wanted to fly, but I didn't know exactly what and where I wanted to fly. But the Heli Expo and the Mil2Civ was huge in me making a lot of decisions with that. I also wouldn't discount for the active duty guys, the Fleet and Family Support Center and the resources that the military themselves give out with interview skills and financial stuff, and they not necessarily the resume building, because they're more focused on standard stuff, and we have a very specific format. But yeah, going through all that stuff, and then as you work through the career fair, that's typically the day after the Mil2Civ seminar, you're meeting recruiters, you're meeting chief pilots, they're looking at your resumes, they're talking about what you're looking for and getting you in touch with other people that are doing what you want to be doing, right? So the biggest thing is find someone who has been where you're at and who is doing what you want to do, and just talk with them, see how they did it, see who they know, who they can contact you with, and ask questions, be receptive, be a blank slate that they can just put so much information into.
Great, thanks, Cam. All right, so we got a couple of questions that are coming up. So thank you for all the participants that were asking questions. I'm going to try to address these as well as kind of keep us on track for like the rest of the information we want to share. One of the questions is about what kind of a resume do I need, and what does it look like? What should it look like? If you don't mind, Stacy, shared, if I could peg you, just sort of mention about what sort of resume format should they be looking for, and maybe give a plug to some resume formats that may be available.
Okay, thanks, Heidi. You hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So basically, I have some resume templates that are available, and they are hooked to my LinkedIn. So if you do go on LinkedIn and you look up Stacy Sheard, I have an article that is for maintainers and for pilots, and there are a couple of templates within that LinkedIn article. So pretty much the truth is, so first off, a resume is something you absolutely need. But what's primary to that is actually who you network with before you give them your resume. So you can shoot off resumes all day long, but unless you know someone or have a contact at a company, that is what makes the connection. That's what makes all the difference. So that's why everyone keeps plugging, go to Heli Expo, go to Heli Success, go to attend all these things, because there's no replacing the in-person contact. But basically, so the format and the templates are on the LinkedIn. The format is, it should be in one page. Your aviation resume should be on one page. And that actually is the same for fixed wing as well. So one page in length, and your flight hours and experience are the main thing people are looking for. So those belong at the top next to your name and your email and your phone number. A resume should be very clean, easy to look at, easy to read. And there is a format that can help you with that. And I know that if you work on your resume and you send it to any of the people that you see in this webinar right now, you send it to any of them and they will help you critique it, send it to them. It takes about 3 or 4 times, kind of a back and forth iteration with someone that's trying to help you get your resume nailed down and fine-tuned. But what you want is a one-page, really clean-looking resume, because employers only spend about 6 seconds, if that, looking at resumes. So don't worry about an objective or a summary or things like that. If you're applying to a pilot or a mechanic or any position, you're applying to it, they know what you want. So you don't have to worry about the objective, and you don't have to tell them about what you did for the last 20 years at the top, because you're going to list that in all of the job descriptions. So it's really great to have a good punchy a job title, and then a brief job description for each job title. So a couple of the other things is make sure you have the dates on there. You want month and year. So if you do skip some time and eventually in an interview, someone wants to talk about that, then they can. But you very much want to read the job advertisement. If you don't read the job advertisement, then you're not even using any of the terminology that they're asking for. So you want to make sure all of your military acronyms are cleaned up and spelled out. Just spell the words. And try not to speak in as many acronyms, and read the job advertisement and use the terminology in the job ad and put that in your resume. After a while, when you read enough job advertisements, you can kind of have all of that stuff wrapped up in your job descriptions and your job titles and things like that. So if it's all included, then you're even going to hit the computerized resume hunters that are looking for all the keywords. And definitely no need to put keywords, a keyword list at the bottom, because they'll all be in your job descriptions once we get it all cleaned up for you. So delete the decimals in your flight hours. I think that's probably wise. You don't have to be that exact. And then also don't round up your flight hours. If you're at 11:57 and you're putting 1200 or 800 or anything's rounded up to the hundreds or 450 or anything like that, try to get it as accurate as possible. If it's 457, put that. You don't want any questions as to how much time you actually have, and rounding it up actually kind of looks a little bit lazy too. And especially when someone's kind of looking for accuracy, and if you're really actually close to their minimums, they may look at you before you actually get to their minimum requirement. And then if, of course, the military, if you fly an aircraft, you want to put something in, if you're an age 60 pilot in command, you definitely want to spell it out. Spell out, UH-60 Black Hawk pilot in command as your job title, or search and rescue pilot in command, or pilot. And there's a lot of tips that I have on my LinkedIn, and I'm sure Scott has as well, and probably all of you could easily sit down and help someone with their resume. So that's just that's just the bulk of it. And I know a lot of you, your lives are tuned to your additional duties, whatever they are. Some of them will apply in your resume and some of them won't. So as we cross things out of your resume to clean it up and create a little bit more white space for easier reading, don't be offended. Put on your thick skin, give us your resume, and we can go through it with a red pen real quick and show you what's important, what's not. And it's no hit on you personally. It's just us trying to help you get your resume in shape as much as possible. That's a good quick brief.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stacy. That was gold. A lot of gold all packed into one quick description. So Stacy hit on a number of things that I kind of want to also address here, is basically how to effectively demilitarize your resume, how to, just like Stacy said, your extra duties are valuable to some degree, but maybe put that in a cover letter, but your resume right now should be your qualifications that make you qualified for the job you're applying for. That should be at the top. Whether you're a mechanic or a pilot, you need flight hours over the top, you need your medical, you need all of your certifications, whether you're a CFI or instrument rating, your type ratings, if that applies. And if you're a mechanic, your AMP license, avionics background, and IA, if that's applicable. All right, so jumping over, I'd like Scott to maybe address a little bit of methods of resumes that you've seen where people could more effectively demilitarize it.
Yeah, and I'm going to also parlay the question about SkillBridge in the same answer. So I first have to say one funny little comment is I've actually been called over my boss's desk at Boeing when he's had an open position, and he said, "Take a look at this resume," because he knows I'm one of those resume people at Heli Expo. So I'll look at it, and he looked at me and said, "Is this guy a pilot?" And I couldn't believe it. So we looked all over and we didn't see flight hours, but we did see Fort Rucker and a few other places and job positions that really sounded like he might be a helicopter pilot. And I said, this person could really use the expo because it was really bad. Yes, I think if you have the wherewithal, we're not just going to keep repeating this for sport, but if you have the wherewithal to make it to the Mil2Civ, it is really priceless, and you're going to leave there with your social media and networking shored up. You're going to have a resume shored up, and I'm going to say this because we've done it and watched it happen many times. You may leave there with your dream job. So if you can pull it off, do so. If you can't, be jotting these names down. You see, if you particularly like Dave's accent, write down Dave McCall. You will find him and say, Dave, will you look at my resume? And I can speak for him and say, I promise you he will. So definitely look into that. There was a quick question on SkillBridge, and this does parlay also into resumes. I just received one today from the Boeing SkillBridge team, and it was for an Apache instructor pilot. And I read the resume, and I hope that person, if they're on, they don't take offense. But I said, wow, this person could really use the Expo as well. Very militarized. Don't ever cut out your cute little words like I did when I first got out of the military off your -1 support form. It doesn't matter if you managed 50 soldiers and $800 billion worth of Humvees and all that stuff we used to write. That's certainly great for an OER, but not for an aviation resume. SkillBridge. So I've never been on the action side of SkillBridge, just on the receiving side. Each company has actual teams put together. Boeing has now, I think, a staff of 3. They started with 1, whose sole goal in life is to receive SkillBridge applicants. They usually get a resume, a little information for them, and then they look at their networking list within the company. So Boeing's worldwide. They looked at this and said, wow, an Apache pilot, I better contact Scott and Mesa. Also contacted our V-22 folks for a V-22 pilot recently on Pax River. So what happens is that will get out there. Now, the inner workings of SkillBridge is something that you should learn as you're beginning your separation. In fact, you should have courses to attend. We have a flight operations SkillBridge person in my flight operations. They've been there 2 weeks. They essentially have, I want to say 6 months. Is that correct? Somebody nod. I want to say 6 months, where if a company accepts you in the program, you will actually work in that position for which they could potentially hire you. You keep getting your military pay. You don't put your green suit on or your blue suit on, whatever you have, and you come to work with that company. So we actually have awesome guy with us right now shadowing our flight operations support person. They do the scheduling and the dispatching of all the aircraft at Boeing. And he's on the SkillBridge right now. So if he works out, then Boeing is going to say, we want to hire this guy. It's also a chance for this guy to look at Boeing and say, now I've spent a few weeks, a few months with this folks. Do I want to work here? So it is an awesome program. You're not missing out on any money. And the military actually lets you dip out a little early from separation. So did that answer the question? I kind of went off tangent, I think.
There was the question about what can you realistically expect from entry-level flight training to getting into an HAA position?
Oh, that's a different question. What are the good ways to maximize SkillBridge as a seasoned pilot? It's to kind of do what Stacy just said. You have to really be able to define what it is you can do, what your professional piece is. If you're a maintenance test pilot or an experimental test pilot, I know there's very few of those out there, but if you are, and you want to SkillBridge out to Sikorsky, where Stacy used to work, Boeing, where I'm at, there's all kinds of different places. They're looking for people that have the correct background, right? So if you were an instructor pilot, we do want all our pilots to be IPs at Boeing, but you have to be either an MTP to work production or an XP to work engineering. So that SkillBridge I got happened to be an IP. Not that person's fault, they didn't know, and maybe there's some instructor jobs that we'll have for a customer out there. So always, always, always put the feelers out there, even to companies you don't know if they have the position. But if there's positions posted, just like Stacy said, you need to know what that position is and then sell yourself to that position if you qualify.
Great. Thank you for that great advice. So we are running a little bit short on time, so I wanted to address some other very critical questions that are here. One is schedule and quality of life and basic expectations as far as pay can be expected. So I'll just kind of go in line again. If we could start out, I'll start out with the Gulf of Mexico, and then Fallon, Kim, Scott, Cam, and Becky, and Dave. If you guys kind of address like what you can expect. And Becky, this does apply because what are you doing to support yourself financially while you're going to flight school as a non-pilot going to flight school using your GI Bill benefits? So addressing the Gulf of Mexico questions of 14 and 14 rotation, starting out in a single engine helicopter, you don't need the ATP requirements. They're preferred, but you really only need about 1,200 hours. You do need to meet that FARs that we were addressing before, 135 minimums, VFR. So that means you need at least 1,200 hours of helicopter flight time. You need 500 hours at least of PIC. But you're very unlikely to be hired by a company in the Gulf of Mexico with less than at least 1,000 hours of helicopter PIC. You need 25 hours of night cross country. That's night unaided cross country PIC time. So things to consider for requirements to get in the Gulf of Mexico in a single engine aircraft. Single engine aircraft you can expect to fly in the Gulf of Mexico could be an A-Star, a Bell 407, an AW119, and a 206, a Bell 206. Moving into the twin engine IFR section of twin engine helicopters with 2 crews, you're going to be expected to have at least 1,500 hours of flight time, and you're going to be expected to have at least 50 hours of simulated or actual IMC or instrument flying. And usually ATP minimum requirements to make captain. So you still need the 1,500 hours of time to become a second in command in the twin engine aircraft, but you also are going to be looking at 1,500 hours at least of PIC, preferably 2,000 hours of PIC to become a captain in a twin engine aircraft. Starting out in a single engine aircraft, you can expect a pay between $75,000 to $85,000 a year. You will have to pay out of pocket for your own transportation, at least for Bristow, but they've got great 401k benefits, health benefits, and life insurance. Moving into a captain's position, you can expect to make between $100,000 to $130,000, depending on your experience. And always, of course, generally a 14 and 14 rotation. The 14 and 14 rotation allows you to live anywhere in the country that you would like to live. You can live on base if you like and do extra work over, but basically the nice thing about 14 is you have 14 days off. You can live where you like, and then you're at work for 14 days. Fallon, could you jump on the schedule and compensation question for firefighting?
Yeah, sure. So for fire, you're typically gonna see one of 2 schedules, a 12 and 12, so 12 days on, 12 days off. Your travel to and from work is done on your off time. Companies will pay for that. Wherever you live, a lot of the benefit of being in fire is that generally you can live wherever you want, and then you fly to wherever the helicopter is. The other schedule that you will see, especially if you are in lighter aircraft and starting out kind of in the entry level position for firefighting, is a 12 and 2. So that's 12 days on, 2 days off. So generally you're not traveling home on those 2 days off. You're, hanging out at the hotel, going hiking or fishing or whatever, wherever you are. With 12 and 2s, the, I guess, positive and negative is that a lot of our work in firefighting is seasonal. So you basically work the whole summer on a 12 and 2. And then you get a lot of time off in the winter months. So if you're really into skiing or whatever, or you want a big or larger bulk of time home with your family, that's potentially a positive for you. For some people, that's a negative. There are positions like what I currently work. I work a 12 and 12 year round. So employed year round rather than a seasonal job. If you are in seasonal, a lot of companies will keep you on from year to year, but you're virtually laid off during the winter months, which gives you opportunity to potentially work kind of side jobs if you want, or just take a lot of vacation. And then there's kind of 2 different pay structures with that. So in firefighting, you will see a lot of people who are on a daily rate. So they're paid a certain amount of a daily rate, and then sometimes are compensated as well for how many flight hours they fly. And then there is also a salary alternative as well in other companies. So it kind of varies. I would say probably on the low end, if you're flying light ships on that 12-2 schedule, getting paid a daily rate, you can expect to make around, I would say about 75,000 a year, probably on the max end. And then as you move into, or if you want to move into heavier aircraft, or if you end up working year round on a more salary type structure, the top end is probably around 175,000 a year.
Thank you, Fallon. Scott, can you tell us a little bit about your schedule and a basic general compensation expectation for somebody with your qualifications at the time that you got hired at Boeing?
Sure. Before I do that, I'm going to answer Leonard's question real quick from a while ago. I really don't see them lowering the hours, Leonard, because Part 135, as we've discussed, has real specific requirements. So I think I see them upping the pay to try to keep from losing pilots to the airlines. But that is, you hit on something big right now in the industry. So just like with Kim's work and a few others that we've already talked about, because it isn't entry level, as you can expect, the compensation package is significantly more. At any given time, and I can speak for Boeing, and I have friends at other OEMs, but you'll typically won't start anywhere below 100,000, and it's quite easily go to 200,000 plus as an XP. The companies are obviously hiring people really in a second career. I'm not a second career person at Boeing, but nearly every one of my peers are already retired W4s and W5s and lieutenant colonels in some case. I happen to get out earlier. So it's pretty nice for them because they're making really good money. Plus they have a retirement already and the free healthcare and all that stuff. Boy, did I mess up. Anyway, yes, you can expect to have a very challenging interview process. Not that you are going to be asked questions you can't answer, but the requirements are usually going to be pretty stringent on your experience. Obviously, a seasoned maintenance test pilot is going to be well known out there for a production job. All it takes, and this is why we talk about this in networking as well, you just need to burn a couple bridges with a few folks that are friends with somebody who works at the company of your dream. And I promise you, you won't ever get hired there if the word is this guy's a turd or this gal's no fun to work with. So be mindful of the people you interact with always. That's a life lesson for all of us anyway, but it's really poignant here because this is a small industry, although there's thousands of us. This is small. And if you only have a couple degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon, I can promise you have about 2 degrees of separation from anybody on this panel. So there you go.
Thank you, Scott. And Kim, would you mind addressing basically the flight hour requirements and experience requirements, as well as the general compensation expectation in the corporate sector of the Northeast?
Corporate sector in the Northeast, as we mentioned before, the hour requirements are really going to be up around for the SIC role around 1,500 hours. And then if you're acting as PIC, it's around 3,500 hours. The compensation, I would agree with the numbers that Scott mentioned there. And regarding schedule, the schedule is going to be different with each different corporate flight department based on the needs of that corporate flight department. The way that my schedule works, I do not have any set days off. If I want a particular day off, I have to schedule it. With that said, I generally only work about 13 days a month. So quality of life is very good. Also, I have to live within 2 hours from my home base. But one of the bonuses is we generally, flying the helicopter, we rarely have any overnights. So I'm generally home every night. So quality of life is good.
Great, thank you, Kim. So you've got a decent compensation package, high quality of life, and just scheduling those days off. And like you said, the schedule will be a little bit different depending on each corporate company, it may vary a little bit. I just wanted to quickly answer a question from Chad Morgan. He mentioned, if you're in the military and you're in a non-flying position, is there a limit to where a company will not hire you, or a maximum. I would say generally a year is the most, but if they really need a pilot and you have the experience, generally they will train you, and then in training you'll gain the recurrency requirements you need for the position, and then you have to pass your check ride, and passing that check ride will make you a current pilot again. So just quickly addressing that. Cam, what can you tell us a little bit about your schedule, compensation starting out, and the compensation in the future after being with the company for a few years?
Yeah, so generally it's a 7-on-7. Most of the big companies are hiring positions with a 7-on, 7-off rotation, as Scott was talking about earlier. And you're either going to see 7 days of daytime and then 7 days of nighttime, or you may end up doing 4 days of day and then rotating to the night for the last 3 days. So there may be some switching back and forth. There's also some companies that are hiring relief pilots to fill in gaps for whole regions. And those guys are flying much more irregular schedules, filling in as needed. Generally coming in from the military with no prior HAA experience, you're going to see probably around 80,000, upwards to 100,000 as an upper limit. But of course, if you come in with H-145 experience, maybe the Army guys flying the Lakota, or any kind of prior HAA experience, you can see that come up a little bit. Companies will also offer bonuses and stipends based on whether you're a single pilot IFR, whether you're applying for a position in a base that's more remote, right? They may offer a hardship bonus, they may offer relocation assistance, or any kind of other stipends and different bonuses and incentives to keep you on board.
Awesome. Thank you, Cam. And Becky, jumping to you, you're in a unique position where you're currently going to flight school using your GI Bill. Are you having to work on the side in order to support yourself, or are you able to make enough money with the GI Bill, or were you able to save enough to focus just on flying where you're at now?
So I'm a unique one. Most of my classmates are veterans, so I'll kind of speak from that average experience. I'm unique. Kind of like I said at the beginning, I took the blood money, so I had quite a bit of savings. I'm also single, so I don't have all the other pulls of my income. So if I wanted to, I could live off my savings just fine. I personally didn't want to, just, as things pop up, whether it's vet bills for my pets or a rock in the windshield and a deductible, that started to sting a little bit. So I did get a part-time job, but most of my peers in my class, they do have part-time jobs. And it seems these days that employers are hiring for higher pay an hour, and usually really flexible, and they understand when you say you're going to flight school. But in addition to that, there's other streams of income other than a part-time job that you may or may not be thinking about. So if you're retiring, obviously you're getting that retirement income. I didn't retire, but I had that good savings. You can also have, if you were deployed to combat zones, that was something that was really important to me when I got out. I was going to go to the Guard, and then the position I was going to and the whole Joint Task Force just dissolved. And so I didn't go. And my concern was healthcare. How am I going to pay for that? Well, I found out, okay, I'm a combat veteran, so I get 5 years of free healthcare with the VA, which is really great. And that covers that concern. And then if you really do have a lot of concerns about getting out, I know my initial idea of going Guard part-time was I wanted to transition a little bit easier, right? So it wasn't just so abrupt. Thankfully, it wasn't as abrupt as I thought, even though I didn't have the Guard, but I do have a lot of classmates who still do part-time Guard and Reserve, and the school works with you on that. And then I think something that's a caution here, you'll get it in TAP, Transition Assistance Program, go for disability, right? Just be careful with that because there's some things that may trip you up on your medical. And for those who are going to get a medical for the first time, like I did, you can go through all of flight school and instructing with a third class medical. I shot for the second class because if I want to do utility, I want to know from before I even spend my GI Bill, can I get that? If you want, you can go for the first class as well. But I highly recommend you find an AME who just does aeromedical exams so they can answer your questions before they just kick you out their office. Don't go to an AME who does it as a part-time hustle to their regular physician job, because if they see one thing they don't like, they can say denied, and then you have to go through the waiver process, the FAA. It could be a real headache. And I had a great AME who helped me because I decided, let's go fly helicopters right as I was reintegrating from Afghanistan. So combat stress was kind of a thing. It helped me through it, right? So just be aware of that as you go for disability. I know tons of people transitioning are really pushing you to get 100%. just be careful what you sign up for, because you may have to deal with the paperwork later to get out of that. And then the last thing I'll add is where you go to use your GI Bill matters. Flight schools are not 100% covered because the VA noticed, especially with helicopters, were way more expensive than fixed wing insurance, just the cost of parts, how many times you have to overhaul. It's too much of financial risk. Flight schools go under overnight. And so they want the money up front. You can give your GI Bill and then they go bankrupt. So flight school with your GI Bill, you maybe get a couple $1,000s that the GI Bill will pay out, the VA will approve. If you really want 100% covered, go to a university. And through that university, I'm able to get all of my schooling covered. And then you get a housing allowance, just like you would a BAH. So if you have over 12 credit hours, I make a stipend that covers my mortgage plus some. So there's all those different streams to think about. And I know at the end they'll put out the LinkedIn, but that is probably one of the biggest things that people are concerned about. And you can reach out to me and kind of talk about different ways to do that.
Thank you. But you make an excellent point regarding that medical and transitioning and getting the disability as you're getting out, because some of those disabilities may disqualify you for a civilian medical. So getting that civilian medical, at least a second class, if you're getting close to 40, go for that first class medical to make sure that you can pass it, because you don't want to waste those benefits on flight school and then find out that you can't even work professionally. So that's some really, really excellent points.
Can I throw one last thing, Heidi? Is that all right?
Of course.
I know it was mentioned about the instructor pilot thing. We just recently had a former Blackhawk pilot who went EMS. He wanted to get a CFI and CFII. He came to our school and used his GI Bill 10, 15 years after getting out. And so for those of you who are transitioning, I know I came from high-speed Gear 6 lifestyle, moving 100 miles an hour, and I needed a break. So if some of you guys just want a break, that is an option. Go use your GI Bill at a flight school or university-based flight school to get your CFI, CFII, add that instructor pilot to you. And then Ryan Fish asked a question about stability. I don't know if you were at Heli Success, Ryan, but one of the things that was brought up that piqued my interest, because stability is something I'm looking forward to, is Customs and Border Patrol Air Interdiction Officer. Check that out, Air Interdiction Agent, because they sound like they're home a lot, kind of like Kim's or the corporate. There is a balance. I do get a lot of pilots telling me you're going to be gone all the time. And there is that out there, but there isn't just you're going to be gone all the time. There's other options from what I'm learning as I go along. So just figured I'd share that.
No, excellent point. Thank you for sharing that. Dave, last but not least, if you could just chime in with schedule expectations and compensation expectations for the utility and power line industry.
Yeah, my schedule is 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, supposedly. You always add that supposedly in there. There's been times I've got back home at the airport and my phone's text messages, missed calls, and they asked me to go back to work, and it's like back to work that day for only a couple of days. That's the downside. The good side, last summer, I've got young children. One of my colleagues, he wanted to go back to Germany, where he was from, for this summer, and the timeline worked out. I actually took 10 weeks off last summer, and I went back to work for 6 weeks. So I had the entire summer off with my kids, more or less. You get your benefit. Most companies will do benefits, 401ks, some gym memberships. They'll pay for your flights to and from work. They'll pay for your hotels, usually Hilton, Marriott, Holiday Inn, those types of places. Perks, if you take on a job like this, make sure you're signing up for your frequent flyer miles and your hotel points. I have not paid for a hotel on vacation in the last 10 years. So I've always had enough points. Support network, make sure you've got a good support network. If you're getting out the military and you're moving to a place where maybe you don't have family, like honestly, who's looking after your family when you're gone? Are they capable of looking after yourself, or are you going back into a community where you either maybe have your in-laws or your parents or good friends there that can help you out when you are away at work? And the pay, generally entry-level pay for utility, where they take you on, they train you, I'd say between 55 and 85,000. Mid-level pay, 85 to 150,000. And then there's a thing called a turnkey pilot. As a pilot that can do everything. They advise the clients on how they do the job, and those guys are generally on over 200,000 a year. And I'm not sure if it's still going on. I remember seeing a resume a few years ago from a flight school. This gentleman had a whole bunch of, like, when I say a whole bunch, he had like 250 hours, but he had 50 hours of 206 time, 50 hours of A-star time, 30 hours or 44 time. If you're not coming from a pilot background, but coming maybe using your GI Bill to go to flight school, think about the aircraft that you'll be flying when you get out of flight school. There's no point in getting 50 hours in A-star when you get out of flight school, because there's a slim possibility you'll be flying that straight out of flight school. Think R-22, R-44, Schweitzer, something that is used as a training aircraft.
You make an excellent point, because pilot and command helicopter time is what people are looking for. That there may be some requirements for a turbine helicopter, but for your first entry-level job, for your first turbine job, all you really need is that 1,000 to 1,200 hours of actual helicopter PIC time. So whether that's in an R-22 or an R-44, definitely take that into consideration, because some flight schools would say, oh, you need to be in a 206. You don't need to be in a 206. If you want to do a turbine transition, that's great, but you don't need to train in that aircraft. All right, so we're kind of wrapping up here. We've got a few more minutes left. I just wanted to touch base and readdress the whole networking. How is that going to help you? The people that are listening, what can each one just spend like maybe 1 minute at the most, a very quick best way to network for people that are making the transition now and preparing to make that transition in the next 2 to 3 years? And I'll just start with Fallon. Is Fallon here? There she is.
Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
I was muted and taking myself off. But I mean, we've talked kind of a lot of avenues. I think, just the other thing is really just get your resume straight and good to go before you transition out of the military, and definitely have some on you if you are able to attend any of these networking conferences. Feel free to reach out to any of us on here and use tools like LinkedIn to find companies that you're interested in and do some research on them, because you are able to find and network. I would say try to build a relationship with those people or those companies that you want to go work at. Don't just start like, here's your resume, please hire me. There's an art to communication, which you probably have learned in the military, and it still applies in the civilian world as well. So and just have a positive outlook. Don't close any doors. I couldn't have possibly imagined being a 60 pilot in the military, and now I'm flying Chinooks. That's sort of an uncommon thing for many military folks. So don't just discount yourself because you don't really know what you're going to end up flying. There's things that you might want to and things you might not want to, but just keep all the doors open until you're ready to accept that job.
Great advice. Thank you, Fallon. Kim, what are your recommendations?
Be sincere with your networking. Also, if you can, have a nice, simple business card. One that probably doesn't have your address on it. If you know you're going to be moving quite a lot, just keep it simple, your phone number, your email, and your name. And also just take the opportunity wherever you can to network. Doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't have to be at a conference. It could be anywhere. Use that opportunity. You could be in a line with somebody and maybe see something that says that identifies them as a pilot. And when you do connect with somebody, follow up. 6 months down the line, 12 months down the line, just occasionally check in. And that's how relationships are built, just by checking in and going back and keeping in touch.
Thank you, Kim. What would you recommend, Scott?
Number one, get involved. I don't care if you join the Whirly Girls. I'm a Whirly Girl. Believe it or not, you can be a male and be a Whirly Girl. I support them. I do check rides at tons of flight schools, encounter female pilots all the time. And guess what? If they're not a Whirly Girl, if they want to pass their check, no, just kidding. I tell them about it. Some of them know all about it and are already members. Others go, what? I once helped a flight instructor up in Prescott. She was putting in for, I think it was a Whirly Girl scholarship or a Women in Aviation scholarship. She said, would you help me write this? And I said, she absolutely need a letter of recommendation. She was a great instructor. And as she looked at the form, I kept telling her, you need to get involved. And she didn't know how to get involved. And she said, I can't fill out this form because I don't do anything but go to work and go home. And I said, perfect, now get involved. Join HAI, and this is not a plug because this is supported by HAI. Join HAI. It is the largest helicopter professional organization on the planet Earth. Most people are here because they already know about it. Join the Whirly Girls, join Women in Aviation. I don't care if you join the Civil Air Patrol. Get out there, know people. You could join the Civil Air Patrol this weekend, go to a pancake breakfast, and next thing you know, you could be flying a DC-3 because the guy that flipped your flapjacks thought you were cool and happens to fly the DC-3 for the Confederate Air Force. This is networking. If I had an hour by myself to tell networking stories, I promise it would be riveting. They're not about me, they're about everybody else. So get involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Cam, can you tell us a little bit about the networking that you've done and encountered that's kind of helped sweep you into where you are today?
Yeah, so my big thing was starting early, even if you have 2 years, 3 years before your separation, meet people, and when they have an opening, they'll keep you in mind, right? Just because you're still a far way out doesn't mean you shouldn't be going to Heli Expo, to NHA, to these, events to meet people and recruiters. And then the second thing is find someone who's doing what you want to do and link up with them on LinkedIn, reach out to them, ask them a ton of questions, ask them for advice, right? Figure out how they did it and what advice they have to get into the position that you want to get.
Awesome. Thank you. Becky?
I'll keep it quick. So ultimately, if you're looking for schools, call the school. I don't know what everybody's culture was like in the military. Mine was a raging A-type and everybody was kind of in your face competitive. You don't have to do that. It's your money. In the civilian world, I have yet to encounter anybody like that, except on some Facebook groups. Now, that's another one I'd suggest, Helicopter Pilot Network. Some of them out there, you can just request to join and pick people's brains. Know that you're going to get a lot of charades sometimes in the comments, but you'll make connections that are really good that way. Yeah, echo the Women of Aviation, Whirly Girls. Those are also scholarship opportunities if your GI Bill won't cover it all. But also in calling schools, you can do kind of like Cam said, there has not been yet one place that I'm like, oh, there's helicopters, I'm going to go talk to the pilots, that they've turned me away. My brother happened to live near Cranberry Bogs in Massachusetts, where I'm from. And I saw the guys spraying one day and realized they were 30 seconds around the corner. So I drove down and was like, hey, I'm a helicopter student. And the guys were all so cool and showed their bells off to me and everything like that. So don't be afraid to talk to people. That's, I think, the biggest thing I'm noticing. A lot of my buddies in the program are shy or they're afraid, but I haven't yet to meet a person who doesn't like talking about themselves. So please go talk to them. They love it.
Great point. All right, Dave. Dave. Oh, all right. He might be muted.
There you go. Sorry. Couple of things. Birds of a feather flock together. Don't get into that trap at Heli Expo. Get out and meet other people. Meet some of the civilian students, students that are going through flight school. Ask people what job they want to do. What's their dream job? That's something I always ask them. What's your dream job and how do you want to get there? You may not even know what your dream job was. The first time I seen someone doing what I do, I thought it was stupid and ridiculous and far too dangerous, and I'd never do it. And I ended up doing that. For the guys out there that want to know what companies are available, here's a really good link, and hopefully we can get this passed on better. But if you go to the HEI website, rotor.org, and go to tools and resources, there's a membership directory. It will give you a list of all the members of HEI, and you can search them by their operation or by their aircraft or by their geographical location. So if you want to get out the military and go and fly an S-76, you can find out all the members of HEI that have an S-76 on their inventory. And that's all potential employers.
Great point. Thank you, Dave. And I'll just kind of pull in all the inputs together and give my little 2 cents worth about networking. I want to second what Kim said. Just be genuine. When you like helicopters and you go to a Helicopter Association International Expo, or you go to a Heli Success, or you go to an aviation event, you're surrounded by aviation enthusiasts. You have, even if you're shy, they're going to love something, and that something is aviation. So just bring up a topic, ask them what their favorite helicopter is, or how do they get introduced into the aviation industry, and then let the conversation flow. Just be genuine, be sincere, and be excited about aviation as a whole. whole, having a positive attitude will do wonders for you, not just for networking, but also getting hired by a company who may see potential in you. So keep that in mind. You don't have to be a type A personality in the civilian sector to be successful. At least I work in the oil and gas industry, and the majority of my captains are civilian trained pilots. They're low key, they're very nice, sometimes very soft-spoken people, and they're very safe, very professional, excellent pilots, and they create a really positive and easy to work environment. So you don't also have to take all the training you've been given. What you've done in the military is very powerful, it's very good, and it's very transferable. But sometimes when you come into the civilian sector, feel free to let loose a little bit. We're not active duty here. We want to see people succeed in this industry, and we want the helicopter aviation industry to grow as a whole. So you being here is exciting for us as well. And if you have any questions, again, please feel free to reach out to any of us on that LinkedIn page. Dan Sweet is going to hop on momentarily and put up the link or the page that has all of our LinkedIn links. You can click on there and send us requests and start a conversation with us that method way. All right, Dan, we'll hand it back to you.
Okay, that seemed like a good transition point. So I go ahead and put that screen up there. Anybody who's watching, please go ahead and grab your phone, take a picture of the list, do a screen capture, whatever makes sense for you. We'll leave this up for just a second. One thing I did want to add real quick, when you were talking about some of the different resources that different organizations offer, the scholarships from the Women in Aviation, the Whirly Girls, HAI also does offer scholarships. The scholarship program is open right now, or the application program is open right now. You do need to be a member. And so you'll need to take a look and see what the scholarships are to see if you think it makes sense for you. But as it's been pointed out, HAI is a very much a member-based organization. We want to support pilots who are making transitions. We want to support the military. Speaking of that, I want to express my gratitude to each of the people who are panelists today. We want to thank you for your service. We want to thank you. I want to thank you personally for your enthusiasm. You know, sitting here listening to the webinar today has been so enjoyable, listening to the passion you have, not only for your careers, but for wanting to help pay it forward to give something to the people who are following you down this path. And so it's really been enjoyable. It's really, it's just been infectious almost to listen to something like this. And so I'm grateful for everybody's help. I think that is time to go ahead and wrap things up today. I want to express my appreciation to Fallon, to Heidi, to Kim, to Becky, to Dave, to Cam, to Scott, and to Stacy, who joined us late. Thank you so much for joining us. Go ahead and move into what we've got coming up. Our next webinar is coming up on October 27th, 2 weeks from tonight. That is helicopter dirty dozen maintenance errors. And we are going to have somebody from the FAA FAST team discussing that with us. They just made this presentation during the Vertical Aviation Safety Team Conference that was taking place in Dallas last week. It was a very popular presentation, so I've asked them to come back and give it again. We do have to postpone. I had promised the Clyde Woltman interview next week with Leonardo, and unfortunately, we're going to have to put that off till the first of the year. I'm still looking to try and find an exact date. We do have some exciting webinars coming up between now and then. There was a commander from the Coast Guard also at the VAST Safety Conference last week, who gave a firsthand experience of an accident that he was in. We're looking forward to having him join us among other topics. So please stay tuned. Please follow our YouTube channel. Please follow us on our rotor.org/webinars channel as well. We do appreciate your feedback. We do look for ideas from you on what we can do better, how we can improve. You will receive a questionnaire here very shortly. We do ask that you take just a couple of minutes to let us know what you think about the webinars and how we can improve them. Again, HAI is a membership organization. We want to know what we can do to help you. Are there pain points you have? Is there things that we could do better? Are there things that we're not doing at all? Maybe you actually want to compliment us on some of the things we've been doing. Best way to do that is use the email address president@rotor.org. Send Jim Viola, our president, your challenges, your comments, your ideas. We always listen. Jim always pays attention to every email that does come in. One thing we like to do is share news about the helicopter industry. We love the industry as much as you do. There's a lot of news out there about this, and we can make it very easy to get the information to you. We have a couple different sources. For the most part, they're free. We have a printed magazine, an award-winning printed magazine, Rotor, that comes out quarterly. The only cost on that is if you live outside the United States, there is a nominal charge for postage. But if you're inside the US and you either want the digital edition or the print edition, it's free. If you're outside the US and you want the digital edition, we'll get you signed up for that as well. Each day, we also produce Rotor Daily. That's each business day. And we try to find the 8 to 10 to 15 to 20 top stories involving the rotorcraft industry, put them in one place so you don't have to go out and search for them. I used to sit and enjoy reading Rotor Daily during my morning coffee break when I was at my last job. And I enjoy reading it every much today, now that I'm even involved in producing it. All you have to do to subscribe